The first slap isn't a hand. It's the panel's cold beep, skipping my number while the clerk's eyes skim past me. Old coat, veteran wallet, senior card shining under fluorescent buzz, toward the manager and the guard who fingers his radio like a gavel. Their acrylic window gleaming like ice between us as a restless line breathes down my neck. Posters about dignity curling at the corners. I stand there with bus driver shoulders and kitchen table underlines on section 12B, smelling disinfectant and warm toner, watching her mouth tilt with practiced indifference and his chin lift with small-town authority. And I promise you this, before those lights cool, I will unfold the paper that changes the room and make the rule speak for itself. Before I go on, hit subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. If this speaks to you, share it. Awareness protects our elders. The humiliation lands before I can sit. My number is on the screen, bright and sure, and when I stand with my senior card in one hand and my veteran wallet in the other, the clerk at the nearest window slides her eyes past me as if the light above my head were burned out. She taps, taps, taps at her keyboard, the plastic keys bright as teeth, while the beeping panel skips forward to another number that isn't mine. A row of hard chairs creaks behind me. The air smells like disinfectant and the faint copper of an old radiator. I feel my cheeks heat the way they did back in the driver's seat when a passenger accused me of missing a stop I never missed. I swallow it and hold the paper I came with, the letter folded to show section 12B, the ink thick where I underlined it with a black pen in my kitchen, the same pen I use to write my late wife's birthday on the calendar each year so I don't forget to sit with her memory. The room is set like a little city with rules printed on cheap laminated signs. Priority seating, service order, be ready with documents. The signs are the only ones keeping me company at first. Fluorescent lights hum, the floor carries the scuff of boots and the squeak of sneakers, rubber meeting tile and a slow shuffle I know by heart from depot mornings. The screen above the windows coughs numbers. 2 beeps for a fresh call, 1 beep for the next. My number flares again, hangs there, then disappears like a bus that pulled away while I was still folding my coat. I breathe through my nose and take stock. The letter with 12B sits in a clear sleeve inside my folder. The senior card is a plastic rectangle that's seen 100 rides and 100 more conversations about whether it counts today or tomorrow. The veteran wallet is a short leather thing, cracked at the fold, the edges softened by years. In my breast pocket is the small notebook my granddaughter Leah picked for me because it fits the palm of my hand. She is here today, back a few chairs, small as a breath, watching me like people watch the weather through a narrow window, waiting to see which way the day'll turn. I told her to keep an eye on the screen and the clock. She taps her phone, patient as whetstone. The clerk at window 2 never looks up. Behind her, a printer rattles. The screen burps another number, and a man younger than me, ball cap tugged low, springs up and beats me to the glass. I don't argue. I make a note in the little book. Time, window, skipped call. I mark the section citation like a compass point. I press the edge of the card against my thumbnail until the half moon shows, and that pain brings me back to my plan. No flare, no noise, just the rule read clean, with witnesses if I can manage.
The security guard steps closer. He wears the uniform of authority that means 10 different things depending on who you are and how your shoulders sit. His belt squeaks when he shifts. The radio on his shoulder mutters. He angles his head toward my folder as if the paper could carry contraband, a sound, a smoke. I hold the folder open, plastic sleeves glinting under the lights. He rakes a glance along the slats and lingers on the veteran card. He asks to see the inside of my bag. The bag is old canvas, stiff with creases, a patch sewn on the inside from the days my wife and I drove to the county park and packed cornbread in wax paper. I unzip. He peers. I keep my hands where he can see them because it makes him easier. Leah shifts behind me. I can feel the move more than see it. I note the guard's name from the badge. I write it down. Every sound in that waiting room has a layer. The beep of the panel, the scrape of chair feet, the cough pressed into a sleeve, the clerks calling numbers dull as weather reports. I watch the rules posted behind the glass and watch the rules in motion. The rules on the wall say priority for seniors with valid identification and documented appointments respected by time. The rules in motion say wait until someone is free enough to look at you and then hope the screen agrees. I hold the page with 12B and read silently. It says what it says, spare and simple. It's the kind of sentence you could balance a day on. I take the next open seat near the windows, as close as they let me stand without making a scene. The acrylic barrier between clerk and public is clean. No fingerprints, just the faint fog where breath collects if you lean too close. The clerk at window 1 keeps her chin tucked, fingers moving fast. Her printer stops and clicks as if swallowing. I check the screen. My number has not returned. My shoulders ask me to sag. I tell them to wait. I count 4 signs that use the word policy and 3 that use procedure. The room smells more like paper now, warmed by the machines. The humiliation isn't a single cut. It comes in thin strokes. The skip of my number, twice. The guard's eyes on the bag like I brought a problem instead of a solution. The lady 2 seats down shifting her gaze away from me, but not fast enough to hide the second look. Behind me, someone taps a foot. Leah catches my eye and shows me her screen for 1 second. Time stamped, number shown, then gone. We planned that. If the screen dances, we mark the steps. When the clerk finally glances my way, she points with her eyes to a sideline I hadn't noticed. The sign at the end says orientation in small letters. It doesn't include priority, and it doesn't mention scheduled times. I look back at the main sign where the large letters list who goes when. My finger presses the corner of 12B through the plastic. I set everything in order on my lap. Senior card, veteran wallet, letter, notebook, a blank form I grabbed from the information desk with spaces for time and name. I put the pen next to them like tools laid out before a job. This is October, and the walls carry posters about awareness and support. I stand in front of one and read each sentence to calm myself. Mouth closed, breath slow. The radiator ticks. The panel beeps. A man in a reflective jacket, older than me by a decade, steps to window 3 and is greeted with a nod, the kind reserved for people who fit cleanly into whatever the system expects today. Good for him. I want that for everyone in this room.
I move to the orientation sign and ask with my eyes if this is for seniors with appointments or for new applications. The clerk's eyes return to her screen. The guard watches the space. Not unkind, but not for me. I make another note and step back because I know how to read rooms, and I know when a process is drifting from its own rails. The rules don't enforce themselves. Someone has to bring them to the table and say them aloud so the shape is undeniable. I have done harder things.
I kept my bus on time during snow mornings that swallowed entire blocks. I walked a mother and her twins through the aisle when a crowd forgot its manners. I once talked a drunk down from a rant by asking him about the thrift of his boots. I feel my wife's steadiness in my hands and hear her voice in the way my breath settles. The letter with 12B rests like a small brick. I shift it to my breast pocket so I can draw it in one motion. Leah moves to the row behind the windows and pretends to look at a bulletin board. From that angle, she can see the screen that the clerks use to confirm numbers. We are not tricking anyone. We are making the straightest line we can. A man with a clipboard appears from a back door I hadn't seen open. His badge says manager, the kind of title that's supposed to smooth rough ground. He scans the room and his eyes pass over me once, then again. He says my appointment isn't in the system without saying it to me. He points me toward the orientation sign with a little swing of his chin. I write his name down and note his direction. I do not move to that line. The panel chirps and spits a new number. Mine is still what it was. The heat in my face settles into my chest and turns to resolve. I gather my folder, my card, my wallet, my note. I step to the main counter and place the letter flat without touching the glass. I set the senior card on top, as if setting fare on the driver's tray. Exact change. The clerk's hands pause an inch above the keyboard. She looks at my underlined paragraph and then at me. The guard shifts his weight. Leah straightens in her chair. The beeps from the panel blur into the hum of the lights as I open my mouth to read section 12B. I open my mouth to read section 12B, and the clerk's eyes drift past the paragraph to the guard's shoulder radio, as if language itself needed permission. The radio crackles, the printer thumps. The panel coughs another number that isn't mine. My tongue sits against my teeth with the words ready, but the moment thins like ice beneath a boot. I hold steady, the letter flat beneath my palm, the inked underline a small road I paved at my kitchen table. The acrylic barrier throws my reflection back at me. An old man with a neat coat, a scuffed wallet, and a will not to rise, only to root. The keyboard starts again. Light plastic pops like rain against a bus roof. The clerk nods toward the orientation sign the way a driver nudges a stubborn door with his knee. Routine, not thought. I don't move. I keep my breath measured, the way I learned driving the early route, letting the morning settle in my chest so my hands stay soft. The air is antiseptic and hot metal all at once. Somewhere in the vents, dust lifts and settles. I think of my wife's lavender drawer sachets and the way she made even waiting rooms smell like home, and the memory steadies me more than the chair beneath my knees.
Leah inches closer. A small orbit with a work in mind. She touches her phone, then the notebook she gave me, then her own wrist like a quiet metronome. When the panel flashed my number and replaced it, she caught the seconds with the patience of a tide chart. I feel her there, the counterweight to the room's tilt. I let my fingers find the seam of the clear sleeve and slide the letter out half an inch, enough to reveal the header in the section, the black line drawn by my own hand. I do not tap the glass with it, I simply hold it in the light. The guard shifts nearer. Leather whispers at his waist. He doesn't ask me anything this time. He inspects the space between us as if a question might be hiding there. My folder is open and neat, the plastic pocket shining like clean windows. The veteran wallet rests beside the senior card,
and the letter shows its spine where a staple once held it to another sheet. I let him see what he's already seen, and add nothing to it. My hands stay visible, my shoulders free of the old ache that comes when I'm forced to explain myself twice to someone who isn't listening the first time. Another chair squeals. The line breathes tight and short. Someone mutters about lunch. A child blows into a straw and the cup lid trembles, a small drumbeat in a room of beeps. I mark time in my head, then mark it on paper. Window numbers, clerk movements. When the printer at window 3 stutters, I note that too. Procedures speak even when people won't. The rules on the wall promise a straight path for anyone with the right ticket in hand. I place my ticket on that promise and watch it sag. The manager reappears with a clipboard. He doesn't look at me directly. His gaze moves like a fluorescent flicker, on, off, elsewhere. He says my appointment is not in the system without saying it to my face. He gestures toward the orientation line. The sign there is smaller, less certain, thin letters printed with an old cartridge. The paint near that wall is chipped, a long crescent where a chair once bit too hard. I think of how many rooms I've watched lose their corners to neglect. I do not step toward that sign. I write his name on my page and the direction he pointed. When I turn back to the main counter, the clerk's keyboard is still in motion. I lean enough to catch the scent of warm plastic, the heat of the printer cradle. My breath fogs the acrylic and then disappears. The letter keeps its shape against the barrier, and I feel the edge through my fingertip, way a mason feels the edge of a stone. I try again inside my chest to read 12B, each clause a rung on a ladder I trust. The clerk glances at the guard, and the guard glances at the manager, and the manager glances at the doorway, and all that glancing takes more time than the reading would take. Leah's patience is a thin flame that doesn't go out. She crosses to a bulletin board and studies a flyer so she can see the clerk's monitor at an angle the room isn't garden. Her shoulders square. When she returns to her seat, she taps a note in her phone and lifts her eyes to me long enough to share a small, steadying look. We are recording the day, not fighting it. I adjust my stance. I let the silence fill the frame, because sometimes silence is the chalk outline of a rule not followed.
A man behind me clears his throat and then swallows his sound when he notices the senior card and the veteran wallet laid out like a lesson. 2 women trade places in line without speaking. The panel calls a number that belongs to no one present, then clears it in a single beep and posts a new one. The beeps, the shuffles, the screen's small drown of light, everything layers until the moment starts to feel like deep water. I keep my feet on the tile. I count my breath to 4 and bring it down to 2. I step to the information desk and take a blank form, the one with little squares for date and time and location and description. The paper is thin enough to show the table's grain beneath it. My pen leaves a groove when I write. I note the skipped number, the sideline instruction, the bag check, the manager's gesture. I leave space where names might go. I write neatly because messy records turn back on the writer. My wife taught me that filling a form is like laying out silverware for guests. You place each piece where it is expected and let order do the talking. When I return to my seat, an older man in a reflective jacket, someone who could be my senior in years and in patience, steps directly into the slot I have been marking with paper and breath. He is served with the kind of nod that greases hinges. It is not his fault. The nod is work the room should do for everyone. I watch his receipt slide from the printer with a bright curl and think how easily paper will perform when a finger on the other side asks it to. My own paper waits for a finger to turn it toward the rule it carries. Leah leans forward, then sits back. She doesn't speak because speaking would be noise in a place that confuses noise for evidence. She opens the notebook to the page with the day and draws a tiny square around the hour the screen lied. Her handwriting is small and even and looks like calm feels. I press my thumb into the notch in my veteran wallet and think of the years it took me to learn an even hand in a rough city. The seasons of snow and heat and holiday schedules folded over one another like bus transfers. The guard asks me again for the inside of the bag. Not a command, but not a question. More a practiced gesture. I offer the zipper because resistance would give someone the excuse to close the book on me without reading the page. He sees the same neat stack he saw before. I add his name to the line I left for it. He steps back, and the leather at his waist creaks. I feel how even a polite check can slow a person's place in a line that punishes slowness. I let the feeling pass through me and then out the soles of my shoes into the floor where it can cool. A clock somewhere I cannot see ticks against the HVAC's steady breath. The room holds itself like a held note. I measure the distance to the counter, the distance to the sideline, the distance to the door I will not use. The posters on the wall speak of dignity and support this month. I count the staples in one corner and wonder if anyone else reads the words they walk past. I decide there is more than one way to be loud. Paper can be loud. Calm can be loud. A rule spoken properly is loud.
I place the letter on top of the form and align their corners. The senior card goes above them like a title. The veteran wallet sits to the right because a life has more than one credential and each deserves a place. Leah watches my hands and mirrors my stillness so the moment has weight. I rise just enough to be seen and not enough to force the room's hand. If the panel shows my number again, the record will say so. If it doesn't, the record will say that too. Either way, I will bring 12B to a human ear, with witnesses and time as the room itself instructs me to do. I take 3 steps to the counter, each one small and placed. The keyboard's clatters, stutters, and resumes. The acrylic throws back my face and the fluorescent bars above it like a watery sky. I rest my fingertips on the edge of the letter, ready to lift it and read it with the same voice I used to announce stops on early routes when the microphone cut out and people needed a clear sound to follow. And then the light above window 2 snaps from green to black, and the sideline dissolves in a single hush as the back door clicks. The click from the back door is a thin sound, but it runs through the room like a seam. Window 2 goes dark, the green eye gone. The hush that follows is not silence, it is pressure. I keep my hand on the letter as if it were a handrail. The underline of section 12B, a painted stripe that tells me where to stand. The printer on my left exhales a sheet that curls and settles. The panel blinks, holds a number I do not own, then releases it like a breath let go too soon. I feel the old ache climb from the soles of my shoes to the hinge of my jaw. I bite down once on patience and taste metal. I do what the room is teaching and what years taught me at a different wheel. I steady the flow. I pivot to the information desk and ask for nothing with my voice. I simply take 2 more blank forms, the paper thin and translucent, and slide them into the clear sleeve behind the letter. I write the time with a neat hand that takes as long as it needs. Lines record what faces avoid. When I return to my place at the counter, I place the forms beside the senior card and the veteran wallet as if resetting the table for a second sitting. The manager with the clipboard walks past without landing his eyes on me. His shoes are quiet rubber. The guard watches the door that clicked.
The clerk studies a corner of her screen the way a person studies the horizon before they speak. The fluorescent bars above us hum in a way my bones recognize from old garages and bus barns, a current that vibrates in the ribs if you let it. The air conditioner is on, but the room still smells warmed, like paper that has been handled too much. The ink I laid down in my kitchen smells faintly of solvent and settles my chest each time I look at it. Leah gives me a small nod that says the screen behind the counter held my number for a heartbeat when the green eye went out. She has written the exact second in the notebook with a square around it. She tucks a curl behind her ear and looks at the posters about dignity and support, as if reading them could rewrite the room. I take that steadiness into my hands. I lay my palms flat on the counter's edge, not pressin', not pleadin', just placin'. The acrylic throws my image back at me, softened at the edges by fingerprints from other days.
I read section 12B in my head once more. The clauses stepping down like careful stairs. Priority for seniors upon presentation. Validation of pass at point of service. Respect for scheduled times and sequence. Documentation available upon request. The words are plain. They do not argue. They simply state the shape. I align the letters so that any eye can follow the same stare. I lift my chin to the height of the line I underlined. I prepare the first word. Hold it there the way you hold the first brake tap at the start of a hill. Enough to signal, not enough to lurch. The clerk glances at the guard. The guard glances at the manager. The manager glances at the doorway that clicked. If glances were gears, the room would move. Instead, every look rotates and lands back where it began. I draw one breath, and then another. I arrange my evidence in a quiet semicircle: card, wallet, letter, forms, notebook. I let the panel beep past me again. I let the woman to my right pass a folder through the slot and receive a nod. I let the day do what it thinks it wants while I keep my narrow lane. A man in a reflective jacket leaves window 3 with a small smile and a receipt in his hand that shines like fresh tin. I feel how easily a right thing looks when it is allowed. I do not resent him. I collect that sight and keep it as a measuring stick. I do not step away from the counter. I do not step toward the sideline. I do not step to the door. I hold my ground without turning my boots into anchors. The guard's radio murmurs again. The clerk's printer wakes and sleeps in hiccups. The manager returns and finally looks at me as if he has remembered a word that was stuck on the tip of his tongue. He points to a patch of floor that has no sign and no instruction. I write his name and that gesture on the form without letting the pen scratch. Leah watches my hand, not the manager. She knows that a neat record is armor. She knows my pulse from the skin on my temple and keeps her own breath low so mine can settle into it. I ask for the supervisor without saying it. I fold the request into posture and paper. I place the letter with the underline visible and the subject line clean. I place the forms beneath it in a way that suggests witness accounts have lines to sign. I place the notebook with the neat boxes around timestamps where any neutral eye can read them. The clerk's mouth tightens at the corners, which is not the same as unkindness. It is fatigue worn like a shade. She reaches for a button under the counter and the back door clicks again. I lift my shoulders half an inch and then release them. The small motion keeps blood in the arms. The taste of metal is gone. In its place is the steadier taste of air that has traveled through machines and halls. The supervisor walks in with a clipboard and a hard plastic ID that has been scanned so often the edges are dulled. He is neither hurried nor slow. He takes in the layout of paper and plastic and leather the way I used to take in the busy corner at 7th and Pike, the way you read movement to keep people safe. He stops at the counter and waits for me to make the first move. The room inhales as one.
Leah shifts to a chair where she can see all of us without breaking the path between me and the window. I set the tip of my finger on the underlined sentence. I do not press. I let skin meet ink. The underlining is not an argument. It is a lane marker.
I recount in quiet sequence the facts of the panel in my own head so I can release them in order when needed. Number called, number dropped, orientation line directed, bag checked twice, manager gesture, window dark, window idle. I keep my posture straight the way driving taught me, because a bent back makes a bent voice. The supervisor looks at the letter and the forms in the notebook. He meets my eyes without leaning away. He asks for nothing out loud. He extends a hand toward the documents with patience shaped like an open palm, and I slide the letter forward until the paragraph rests near his thumb. The fluorescent hum seems softer now because I have given my ears a truer sound to hold, the quiet of readiness, paper against acrylic, fingertips against the soft burr of copied text. Leah's phone recording a simple log of time marks that mean something because we decided they mean something. I breathe and feel the inward curve of the rib below my heart, the place where strain collects. I think of the buses I drove that had to climb a hill 1 inch at a time when ice glazed the road. How every inch counted, and every inch was won by staying steady when the world insisted on tilt. The supervisor reads the header, then the section, then the underline. He does not rush. His eyes are not surprised. They move like a ruler across a blueprint. He slides the forms until he can see the dates and times. He taps once in a small rhythm, not impatience, more a meter for building a response that will stand. I wait. I let the room feel how patience can also be a shape. I do not smile. I do not frown. I leave my face like a level line. The panel coughs another number, and I let it pass through me without catching. A chair leg scrapes and is lifted. The guard adjusts the radio as if the sound has weight. The manager takes half a step closer. Leah rests her hands on her knees with her palms down, ready to rise if someone asks for a witness to a timeline. The posters on the wall talk about awareness in words that were written far from this counter but meant for rooms like this. I can feel my wife's careful hands in how the papers lie flat. I can feel my own years in how my breath does not rush. I find my voice in the place where it does the least harm and the most work. I prepare to read section 12B aloud with the cadence I used to announce stops when the microphone died. I choose each syllable before it is born. I balance it on the ridge of my tongue. I tilt the letter up so the words can travel. And the supervisor lifts his palm between us just as I draw breath. If this is reaching you, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and send it to a friend who cares. The raised palm is not a wall, it is a pause with shape. He holds it there, steady, and the room eases a fraction, like brakes feathered on a long hill. He does not push my papers back, he does not move them forward. He lets the silence do the first honest thing it has done all morning. I set my breath down where his hand is and keep it there until the tremor leaves my ribs. He draws the letter toward him. The acrylic adds a faint hiss as paper passes over it. His thumb anchors the margin beside my underline. He reads with the care of someone measuring lumber before cutting, the eyes traveling the line, returning, checking the join. The fluorescent bars above us hum in their old way, but the sound tilts from harsh to neutral.
The panel beeps once and stills. Leah stays in my peripheral vision, small and bright, her hands folded around her phone like a candle cupped from wind.
He opens a narrow binder on his clipboard, the kind with tabs that say more than they show. He finds the policy index. He cross-references the heading. The motion is unhurried, not lazy, like a practiced driver easing a bus into a crowded stop without tapping a single knee. The guard shifts his stance so he can read too. Not nosy, just drawn by the gravity of process when it finally asserts itself. The manager hovers one pace back, clipboard held to his chest as if it might tell him what to feel. I take that in and let it pass, the way you note weather on a route. A fact, not a verdict. My evidence forms a small circle. The senior card catching light at the embossed year, the veteran wallet with its softened corners, the letter with 12B, the 2 blank forms ready, the notebook with Leah's boxes around the seconds. He slides one of the blanks toward me without removing his eyes from the text. The gesture asks for sequence, not story. I fill the top squares: date, time, location. The pen moves clean and leaves a raised trail. The page thin enough to show the counter's grain. I print names in neat lines where the form makes space for them. The guard's badge, the clerk's window, the manager's title. My handwriting looks like balance. He nods once, more to the paragraph than to me, and decides with his shoulders to treat the room as a ledger. He calls the clerk to reopen her terminal without summoning her voice. She reads something on her screen, and I can tell from the tilt of her head that the log exists where it should. The panel's history is not a rumor. It is a list. He turns the binder page and sets his finger on a clause that mirrors my underline. A soft click somewhere in the ceiling marks the air changing directions. I feel the temperature lift a degree. He gestures for the guard to retrieve the bag check notation from whatever place such notations live. The guard touches his radio, listens, and writes on his own small pad. Not defensive, not eager, a man tasked. I let go of the tight coil in my back where the second search had settled. This is what a sub-story looks like when it finds its latch. It does not slam. It slides until the click is quiet and final. Leah watches each piece move and marks the times with the same even script she used for the skipped numbers. Her calm becomes the room's metronome. The supervisor asks for the appointment status with a lift of 2 fingers, and the clerk follows the breadcrumb trail the system leaves behind it, a path of zeros and ones wearing the shape of my morning. She prints a sliver of paper that curls like a shaving, and the printer's heat adds the smell of warmed toner to the blend of disinfectant and old radiator. He samples the printout the way a foreman checks a beam, not to find blame, but to see what must be reinforced so the span holds. I never loved paperwork, but I have learned to respect what it can do when it is placed correctly on a table. He sets my letter beside the system printout and aligns their edges. The underlined clause and the timestamp share a plane. In that alignment, the day stops wobbling. He reaches for the small rubber stamp at the corner of window 2 and hesitates, then leaves it where it is. He is not stamping anything yet. He is building the surface on which stamping will make sense. I breathe and let the air settle low where it does the most good.
The sideline tangle unwinds without anyone announcing it. The temporary sign near that wall remains, but no one gestures toward it now. The clerk at window 3 finishes with the reflective jacket man, and before calling anyone new, glances at our counter as if this is where the room's gravity has shifted. The manager lowers his clipboard an inch. He is not the villain of this day. He is a person inside a habit. I record his name and the time of his look with the same care I gave to the skipped number. Leah adjusts her seat so she can see the supervisor's clipboard without leaning. She flips my notebook to a fresh page for witness names, in case the two people who watched the bag search wish to be part of the record. I do not turn around to ask them. Their willingness is a breeze I have already felt. If it continues, it will find the open page on its own. My job is to keep the lane clear. The supervisor's job is to keep the lane true. He opens a drawer and brings out a thin packet, a printed summary of the priority policy, not just the sentence, but the small paragraphs that orbit it like moons. He lays it next to my letter and checks the language for conflicts. There are none. He smooths the packet with the side of his hand, a mechanic's gesture, knocking the edges flush. The sound is soft and satisfying, paper seated to paper, like plates stacked in a cabinet after washing. This small order closes another loop in me I did not know remained open. He indicates with a minimal angle of his pen a line on my form titled Request. It is a space for what the person at the counter asks the agency to do. I write the words I came here prepared to speak. Validate the senior pass at point of service per published policy. Confirm time of arrival and sequence. Attach panel log to file. Provide written notice of policy to staff on duty. There is nothing angry in the ink. There is insistence shaped like grammar. He reads and lets his eyes rest for a beat on the last phrase, not skeptical, not surprised, simply registering the weight a line will need to carry. He gathers the papers into a light stack and motions the clerk to print a service recap. The printer empties a rectangle with the visit's bones on it. Check-in, screen calls, ID confirmation, notes. He adds it to my pile and turns the letter so that my underline faces me again. For a second, the underlined sentence looks like a road I have already traveled and am traveling even now. He places a small, sticky flag beside it, not to dispute, but to mark. A breath I did not plan leaves me anyway, quiet. The room readjusts to regular sounds. Chair legs find their pads. A cough turns from withheld to ordinary. The guard steps to one side and reads a poster about awareness with the concentration of a person who wants to get the words right this time. The manager returns his clipboard to his palm and speaks low to the clerk at window 1. The clerk nods, not as an apology, not as an excuse, but as a hinge moving where it should. I do not gloat. There is nothing to gloat over. The point is not my win. The point is the rule sitting upright where everyone can see it. Leah stands, stretches lightly, and sits again. She places my pen where my fingers can find it without looking. Her presence keeps the room human for me when the machinery wants to flatten faces into forms. I think of my wife's hands pressing seams flat on a kitchen towel, heat and weight making a line you can fold to. I feel that same patient weight in the way the supervisor builds this moment. There is a mercy in rigor when rigor serves people. He slides my senior card back toward me and holds it there with a fingertip until my thumb meets it. The plastic is warm from contact, the embossed numbers shallow but sure. He keeps the letter and the printouts aligned before him and checks one more cross-reference in the binder. It is not second-guessing. It is the last glance before a rivet is set, the final look down a sight line to confirm the beam is square. He arranges the stack so that the letter sits on top, the packet beneath, the recap below that, and my form last. He sets the pile in the center of the counter, where the acrylic gap leaves room for paper to pass, and invites me, with that same small index finger motion, to see what he has seen. I study the order and feel the edges match inside my chest. The morning's small cuts stop swelling. They do not vanish. They lie flat where they belong. He lifts his eyes to mine long enough to hold a thought and then returns them to the page. He taps the top corner once, a soft knock on wood, an old habit of someone who has learned not to rush the last step. He turns to the clerk and signals something I do not need to know to feel, a procedural pivot like a gear engaging. The clerk reaches for a new sheet of paper in the tray and loads it with both hands so it feeds straight. I gather my wallet and card, leave the letter where it works best, and rest my fingertips on the counter's edge. The acrylic cools my skin. The radiator ticks twice, relieved of gravity it shouldn't carry. Leah's notebook rests open on her lap, the pen tucked in the coil, the seconds captured in neat boxes that look like windows on a slow-moving train. I let the room's breath match mine for a few beats. The plan is no longer just inside me. It has a surface, a stack, a path. When he finally speaks, it is not a flourish but a placement, the kind of sentence that lets the day settle on its own feet. I incline my head to hear it and feel the lines I drew at my kitchen table meet the lines he keeps behind the counter. The morning is still the morning. Nothing is undone. But the ground under us has found level again, and I stand in that small level like a man who knows how to use a rule without cutting with it. The supervisor's voice carries the room back into place, and I feel the words settle like tools returned to their hooks. He frames the next step with plain terms. A short administrative review at the small conference room off the main hall. Records open. Timeline checked. Policy present. No flourish. He gestures for the clerk and the manager to bring their pieces and asks the guard to note his part. The movement is practical, like repositioning cones on a road so traffic stops guessing. Leah's eyes meet mine with a quiet, steady yes. I return the nod and gather what belongs in my hands. Senior card, veteran wallet, letter with 12B, the forms I filled, the notebook with times boxed like clear windows. We cross the threshold into a room that smells of paper and faint coffee. It is not grand. A rectangular table, a pitcher of water, 3 plastic cups, a small recorder with a red light that blinks the way a heart might blink if it were polite. Chairs scrape the carpet in a soft chorus. The HVAC hums a note I recognize from long afternoons at depots when the day needed to be kept from overheating. I take the seat that faces the door, habit from years of watching who comes and goes. The supervisor sits centered, the clerk to his left, the manager to his right. The guard stands near the door and writes on his pad, not looming, only present.
The stack of paper we built at the counter is placed in the middle, edges aligned, the underlined sentence visible. The recorder's red light steadies to a constant glow. The supervisor opens the meeting in the narrow way these things are opened. Date, time, purpose, participants. He names the policy and the section. He states the sequence we're here to confirm. It is spare language that has the dignity of a clean shop floor. He invites me to present my account not as a story to be believed or doubted, but as a line to be matched with the system's own lines. I steady my palms on the tabletop and read section 12B aloud. I read it once, then rest the page, then read it again at a pace the room can live inside. Each clause lands without echo because the furniture holds it and the paper nails it down. Priority for seniors upon presentation. Validation at point of service. Respect for scheduled times. Documentation available upon request. I place the letter close enough that any eye can follow the inked underline like a curb set true along a street. Leah breathes in rhythm with me. Her quiet is ballast. The clerk prints the panel log. It unfurls from a small printer on a cart like a ribbon taught to behave. She tears it neatly and sets it beside the letter. There it is, my number when the green eye showed, my number when it slipped away, the pause when a window went dark. Times align with the boxes in my notebook. The manager reviews the appointment entry and produces the internal note that sent me toward the sideline without priority indicated.
The note looks the way a shrug would look if someone turned it into ink. The guard reads his bag check entry off the pad and confirms the time matches the second record. Each piece finds its place in the stack. None of it asks for an apology. It asks for a fix. I walk the room through the morning, step by step, my voice low enough to keep the air smooth, my words square enough to carry weight. I name what was done and what was not done. I point to the signs that say priority and to the moment the room chose a different story. I mark where a simple confirmation would have spared us the long drift. I remember to breathe. It is not anger that moves me. It is the relief of edges finally visible. The supervisor listens with his eyes on the stack, and when I finish, he nods once, the way a person nods to a level when the bubble centers itself. He summarizes the facts as he sees them. A senior with proper identification and a scheduled time was not processed according to the policy on the wall and on the page. The panel skipped, the sideline was used in place of the main sequence, a bag check introduced delay without procedural need. He reads that out as if measuring a board in front of apprentices. The room is not embarrassed by the truth, it is steadied by it. He turns to the clerk and asks for the service recap. She prints it and adds the small rectangle to the growing ledger in the middle of the table. Consequences take on shape right there. The manager agrees to circulate a written notice on the 12B priority within the hour and to include it in the daily briefing for staff the rest of the month. He confirms a short training block by the end of the week, with emphasis on panel sequence integrity and the distinction between orientation and priority flow. The guard acknowledges the need to conduct bag checks off the flow line when safety is not at issue, and to log them without interrupting service order. The clerk commits to a simple cross-check on the terminal whenever the panel blinks a number twice. None of this is dramatic. It is made of screws and alignment.
The supervisor writes the action list on the recap in block letters and has each of them initial their part. He adds a line that matters to me in a private way, the practice of posting a small sign at the counter that quotes the priority clause in a font anyone can read without leaning. That sign will meet people at eye level before the screen has a chance to get it wrong. He looks at me then, not as a performer, but as a man offering a tool to another man who builds with his hands. I nod because that is the kind of fix that outlasts apologies. He turns to me and asks if I wish to append a request to the record. I point to the words I wrote on the form at the counter and say, in as few words as the form itself, that I want the panel log attached and a written notice of policy provided to staff on duty. He marks it done. He slides the recap for my signature and sets a second copy aside for me. The recorder's red light means the room will remember more cleanly than memory can, and that is a mercy of its own. There is a quiet moment when no paper moves. The air smells like toner and old carpet and the faint sweetness of the hand soap in the restroom down the hall. I think about the bus microphone that used to fail in winter and how I learned to project to the back row without shouting. That is what reading the rule felt like, sending a clear sound through machinery with a mind of its own. I think of my wife's way of placing a folded towel exactly where it needed to dry fastest. This is that at a counter instead of a clothesline. The supervisor closes the binder and rests his palm on the stack, not possessive, only anchoring the moment to the table where we have set it. He states the outcome for the record in a voice that is all verbs. Validate the pass, correct the timeline, inform staff, train, post the clause, attach the log. He adds a simple line about inviting feedback from seniors over the next month, a box on a clipboard at the entrance, so the room keeps learning after we leave it.
That is the part that lifts something deep in me. A fix that invites the next fix, does not turn stale. The clerk returns my senior card across the table. I feel the warmth from her fingers still in the plastic. The manager, who had spent the morning moving like a person whose shoes were one size off, straightens with a kind of relief, as if the floor now meets him properly. He looks toward the door, as if imagining the small sign with the claws where people stand to gather their papers. The guard tears his note from the pad and tucks it into the sleeve where such entries belong, eyes lingering on the word priority, as if he is memorizing the shape of it. We rise together, chairs making a soft stanza against the carpet. The recorder's red light clicks out. Leah slips the notebook into her bag and links her arm in mine, not for balance, just to share some of hers. The supervisor holds the door, and we step back into the main room. The panel beeps and posts a new number. It goes to an older woman who has her documents ready, and the clerk at window 3 waves her forward with an easy motion that looks new and right at the same time. The air feels lighter, as if the vents have found their rhythm.
I stand there long enough to see two sequences run the way the policy says they should. Windows glow, numbers advance in order. Someone checks the system when the screen blinks twice. The small sign quoting 12B is not up yet, but I can already see where it will live at eye level between the laminated posters that talk about respect. The room sounds the same sounds as before. Printers, footsteps, coughs, but their weight has shifted. They no longer press, they carry. On the way out, I place my copy of the recap behind the veteran wallet in the fold where I keep steady things. The letter with the underline belongs to the file now. I keep a photocopy in the clear sleeve. My breathing is the even kind that leaves your ribs without a tremor. At the threshold, I look once more at the panel, now a simple tool again instead of a gatekeeper, and I realize the most grateful feeling I have is plain relief. Not victory, not triumph, just the clean relief of a rule standing up where anyone can lean on it without begging it to behave. In the parking lot, the air tastes like leaf dust and cool metal. The sun edges out from behind a cloud and warms the top of my hand. Leah squeezes my arm, and when I turn to her, what I see in her face is not pride in me, but trust in the shape of the world when people insist on the right shape. That trust steadies my knees more than any apology could. I leave the building lighter than I entered it, not because anyone praised me, but because the room we all share now remembers what it is for. Dignity walks best on level ground. If you like the story, tap like, subscribe, and write what you'd do if it were your family. I'll be here for the next one.